We're in the home stretch, which probably would be more exciting if it didn't mean that we were that much closer to the end of summer and the start of a new term, but we're not going to think about that right now. It's taking me a bit longer than expected to finish reviewing your AP drafts, but hopefully you've received some useful feedback during the peer review. If I haven't responded to your draft, just hang on a bit longer. And remember that you have until the end of the term, September 1st, to complete the final draft, together with your final ePortfolio. I'll be talking primarily about the reflective essays for your ePortfolios and the digital presentation for the advocacy project in this video. You have a draft on the reflective introduction due at the end of next week, so let's talk about that first. In the prompt, you'll see that you have a handful of questions to answer about your writing process. I'd just like to highlight the questions about using hypothesis, since to my knowledge, you are the first composition class using this tool at UC Irvine, and it's one that I have a vested interest in, since it ties in with my dissertation. So if you spend a little more time reflecting on hypothesis, I wouldn't be mad. I'm also asking you to talk about your 3 most valuable sources, how you found them. Was it through the library, in the works cited of another source, or from one of your peers on our hypothesis group? What I don't want is for you to answer all of these questions in a monotonous, list-like format. I want you to combine and prioritize your responses into an essay that actually reflects your experience of the class, which means I want you to say more about the aspects that directly influenced your process and less about the general questions. You want to show the highlight reel here. To reinforce this, I'm asking that you back up all of your observations by citing the artifacts of your drafting process, such as source evaluations, responses, peer reviews, any of my comments, chats, or emails. Obviously, you'll have to manually quote the peer reviews and comments, but I encourage you to use hypothesis links wherever possible. Note that the 1,500 plus word count for this essay includes any new hypothesis comments that you're writing for the reflective essay. Here I have a sample reflective essay page in my ePortfolio. Rather than referring vaguely to some change I made, I'll just highlight the word here and then link directly to a hypothesis annotation of the draft I'm talking about. For the sake of illustration, I'll pretend one of these samples is my draft. What you include in the annotation is up to you. You might use a quotation of the original draft that you revised and include your explanation of how and why you changed it. Or you might quote what one of your peers said in peer review and then explain why you changed it and how you revised it. You might just use the quotes and save the explaining part for the main text of the essay. You could even embed the links to another hypothesis comment within the comment itself if you wanted to get really meta. You're going to want to upload each of your drafts to their respective categories in your ePortfolio by the end of the term, and it's up to you whether you want to just cut and paste the text or upload the Word docs and PDFs you've previously submitted. Uploading the text will make it a little easier to use hypothesis comments, but you'll have to embed any graphics from your draft manually, which you can do by clicking on the Insert Edit Image button after you upload the image files to your Canvas account. If you want to just upload your original doc or PDF file, hit the garbage icon in the upper right of the text field and choose Course Submission under the Add New Content menu. You'll already have the annotated bibliography more or less complete, but just remember to paste together all of your ABs into a cumulative AB and then highlight 3 or more of your most important sources. You don't have to alphabetize it or anything. This just makes it easier for me to build off the work you've done this quarter and create a cumulative AB as a resource for future classes. Let's look now at the digital presentation. You'll see that this is really just a summation of your work thus far. You're allowed to use the HCP to summarize the history of the problem, and your AP to outline the solutions. What I'm really interested in here is the way your visuals interact with the spoken text that you've more or less composed, as well as the extent to which you condense and paraphrase everything you've researched and written thus far into a compelling 10-minute presentation. There are a number of platforms you might use to do this, and I'll post a few links to different tutorials in today's announcement. But I want to go into some more advanced techniques which you might be able to make use of if you're using a recent version of PowerPoint. We all know it's really easy to make a boring PowerPoint. So one of the things I like to do is narrate mine during the transitions, rather than talking over a static slide, having a transition, and then talking over another static slide. This isn't the most user-friendly process in PowerPoint, but it can make it easier by right-clicking the top menu bar and adding a few tools. Here I've added some sample text, which in a normal PowerPoint would appear all at once and disappear when I finish talking. But instead, I'm going to duplicate this slide a few times by right-clicking on it and selecting Duplicate, or using the Ctrl-D command. Then I'm going to apply this new morph transition and choose the words option. If morph is not available for you, you can try fade or something else. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the morph transition to automatically animate the implicit logical flow of ideas in this slide. The easiest way to do this is to start with the first slide and select all the text that you want to appear in the later slides and drag this out of the text box out into the margins of the slide. Then go to the next slide, drag a bit less to create a gradual unfolding of the idea. You'll find that this is all highly expressive, and you can play around with reducing the content to its essential details over time. Since you know the viewer will already have been looking at it for a minute, I'll get rid of some of the extra text and just leave points A, B, and C and the word problem, which I'll make bigger for emphasis. Then I'll add a brace symbol too to clarify my point. But if I want this all to animate smoothly and not just appear out of nowhere, I'll have to copy the new symbol to the previous slide and drag it off the margin somewhere. Now, when we preview the animation, we get this flowing text effect, which I think is a rather powerful way of breathing life into ideas, even when the only content present is text. You can also switch the setting to words for a slightly different effect. Just be careful with this one though, since it gets a bit chaotic. And remember that this also works reasonably well with the fade or other transitions. Most of your tools for rehearsing and recording your voiceovers are under the slideshow tab. If I were doing this live, I might rehearse timings, but for our purposes, we'll just be using the Record Slideshow tab. After I hit record, I can highlight certain elements while I talk, and then advance the slide when I'm ready to continue. All of the audio voice files appear in the lower right, and the timings will appear on the Transition tab, or on the upper toolbar if you've added them like I have. Right-clicking the speaker icon, I can trim out any extra silence that I don't want, though it is good to leave a little bit between voiceovers so you don't sound too rushed. If you want your voiceovers to play through transitions rather than after them, however, you're going to have to make a few changes. I want to clarify that this gets a little tricky and isn't at all required. Neither is using the morph transition or PowerPoint for that matter. I'm just showing one particularly interesting way to breathe some life into otherwise plain texts. For this, you're definitely going to want to add the duration and advance after fields to the toolbar, as well as the play in background and loop until stopped icons. It gets really tedious having to click around and change these otherwise. Then, go to the Transitions tab, uncheck Advanced Slide After Mouse Click, and check After 0, and apply this for all slides. Then you basically go through all of your voice recordings, trim the audio, and then copy the duration of the trimmed audio, which is in the upper right corner of the window, into the duration field on the top of the toolbar. Then click the Play in Background button, and unclick the Loop Until Stopped button. The only thing is that you're going to be copying the duration for the audio on the current slide onto the next slide, because the transition is actually happening between the current slide and the next. So the first slide you'd have 0 for both duration and after fields, and then you'd copy the duration for the audio into the duration field on the next slide. I'll admit that this actually gets really annoying if you do want slides to stop for a moment, because then you're going to need to divide the overall length of the clip between duration and after fields. In these cases, it can be easier just to break the animation up into separate slides, but I don't really have time to get into this here. To convert your PowerPoint into a video, select Export, Create a Video, Presentation Quality, and use recorded timings and narrations. Don't worry about the seconds per slide, since this will only apply if you haven't already specified timings. If you want to see some more examples of the morph transitions in action, you might want to check out some of the videos on my Surface Scholar channel. Once you have your video file, you can go to any video hosting service of your choice to upload. I prefer YouTube since it's the most popular, and it's already linked to my Google account. All you have to do is drag and drop your file into the YouTube uploader and choose Publish when it's ready. Then copy the share link into the assignment submission field, upload it to your ePortfolio, and you're good to go. And remember that using PowerPoint and YouTube is just one way to approach this presentation. I've uploaded some samples of the reflective essay and digital presentations for your perusal. You're not required to annotate this batch, but I would encourage you to at least check out the first sample RE, since it's high scoring and it has a lot of personality and reflective insight. I've always been particularly fond of its conclusion. Be sure to watch all of the digital presentation samples, since it'll give you a good idea of the variety, Some are very visually appealing, but rather weak in content, like Sample 2, and others are rather unappealing visually, but rich in content, like Sample 3. Ideally, yours will find some balance between the two. After you've completed your digital presentation and revised your AP and reflective essays, all you have to do is upload the links, and then double check that you have all the components ready for your final ePortfolio, and then upload the link to the main page of your portfolio, just so I know you're done. Finally, copy and paste all the text from your ePortfolio into a Word document and submit it to turnitin.com using the class ID and enrollment key listed in the prompt. That's all there is to it, and while we still have a few weeks left in the term, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work and your willingness to help me experiment with Hypothesis as a platform for collaborative research. I hope that this has been a challenging but manageable course, and I hope you all enjoy what remains of the summer, and I wish you well in your academic and professional pursuits next year.